Christmas had always been Lily's favorite time of year. At just 9 years old, she believed the holidays had a special kind of magic. She spent weeks counting down the days, hanging paper snowflakes in her bedroom, and humming Christmas songs while she worked on handmade cards for every member of the family. Her favorite card was for Grandma Margaret, decorated with glitter, tiny reindeer stickers, and a carefully written message that read, "Thank you for always being part of my Christmas. Love, Lily." Watching her work so hard made my heart swell. Lily had the kindest soul I'd ever known. She had been only 3 years old when Daniel came into our lives. He never treated her like someone else's child. From the moment he held her tiny hand, he became the father she deserved. 2 years later, he legally adopted her, and from then on, there was never a difference between Lily and any child who shared his last name by birth. At least not in our home. Unfortunately, Daniel's mother, Margaret, had never fully accepted Lily. She was never openly cruel, but there were little things that were impossible to ignore. Family photo albums often left Lily out. Birthday cards arrived late, if they arrived at all. She always had an excuse that sounded reasonable enough to avoid an argument. Daniel noticed it too, but every time he confronted his parents, Margaret insisted we were imagining things. "This isn't favoritism," she'd say with a polite smile. "You're reading too much into it." For years, we tried to believe her. Christmas morning arrived with fresh snow covering the neighborhood like a white blanket. Daniel's parents hosted their annual family celebration in their enormous house, where every room sparkled with lights, ribbons, and ornaments. The smell of cinnamon, roasted turkey, and freshly baked cookies filled the air. Lily bounced beside me, clutching the small gift she'd bought for Margaret with her own allowance, a lavender, scented candle wrapped in silver paper. "I hope Grandma likes it," she whispered. "I'm sure she will." I replied, forcing a smile. After dinner, everyone gathered around the towering Christmas tree. Wrapped presents were stacked so high they nearly reached the lowest branches. Richard, Daniel's father, began reading the name tags. Oliver, a remote control car; Sophia, a new tablet; Ethan, a gaming console. Each child squealed with excitement while the adults laughed and applauded. Lily sat quietly beside Daniel, her hands folded neatly in her lap. Every time another gift was handed out, she smiled patiently, certain hers would be next. One by one, the pile beneath the tree grew smaller, then smaller still. Finally, Richard picked up the last brightly wrapped box and handed it to Daniel's youngest nephew. The floor beneath the tree was empty. Lily blinked, looking around in confusion. She leaned toward Margaret with a shy smile. "Grandma, maybe mine got mixed up somewhere." Margaret looked at her for only a second before setting down her coffee cup. "No, sweetheart," she said calmly. "Nothing was mixed up." The room fell silent. She folded her hands and continued in an almost casual tone. "Those gifts were for my real grandchildren." For a heartbeat, no one moved. Lily's smile disappeared. Her eyes filled with tears she desperately tried to hide. She lowered her head and whispered, "Oh, okay." My chest tightened so hard I could barely breathe. Every instinct told me to grab my daughter, walk out that door, and never look back. I looked at Daniel, expecting the same stunned disbelief I felt. Instead, he slowly stood from his chair. His face was calm, too calm. Without saying a single word, he reached down, gently took Lily's trembling hand, and looked directly at his mother. The silence in the room became unbearable. Then Daniel spoke just 5 words that changed everything. "Come on, sweetheart, we're leaving." No one spoke as Daniel led Lily toward the front door. The room remained frozen in stunned silence. Margaret stared at him with an expression that mixed disbelief and annoyance, as if she expected him to turn around and admit he was overreacting. Instead, he reached for my hand. "We're done here," he said quietly. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed our coats, wrapped Lily's scarf around her neck, and followed him outside into the cold winter air. The moment the car doors closed, the silence finally broke. Lily wiped at her cheeks with the sleeve of her sweater. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Did I do something wrong?" Her small voice shattered my heart. I turned in my seat to comfort her, but Daniel answered first. "No," he said firmly. "You did absolutely nothing wrong." She looked at him through tear-filled eyes. "Then, why didn't Grandma get me a present?" Daniel tightened his grip on the steering wheel for a moment before looking at her in the rear-view mirror. "Because sometimes grown-ups make very ugly choices," he said, "and tonight Grandma made one." Lily nodded quietly, trying to understand something no child should ever have to. Instead of driving toward home, Daniel took a different exit. I frowned. "Where are we going?" He smiled for the first time all evening. "To finish Christmas." 20 minutes later, we pulled into the parking lot of the largest shopping mall in the city. Despite the late hour, the Christmas lights still glowed brightly, and several stores were open for holiday shoppers. Lily looked confused. "Why are we here?" Daniel got out, walked around the car, and opened her door. He knelt until they were eye level. "Lily," he said gently, "look at me." She did. "No one, not my mother, not anyone else, gets to decide whether you're my daughter. I made that decision the day I promised to be your dad. You are my little girl, and nothing will ever change that." Fresh tears rolled down Lily's cheeks, but Grandma said I'm not real. Daniel shook his head. "Being a real family isn't about sharing DNA. It's about showing up, loving each other, and protecting each other. That's what makes us a family." Without another word, he pulled his wallet from his jacket and handed her a credit card. "Tonight," he said with a smile, "you get to choose every Christmas gift you dreamed about." Lily's eyes widened. Really, every single one. For the first time since leaving the house, a genuine smile spread across her face. The next 2 hours felt magical. She carefully picked out a beautiful purple bicycle, a stack of adventure books, an art set she'd admired for months, a giant teddy bear nearly as tall as she was, and a cozy blanket covered in snowflakes. Daniel insisted she choose anything that made her happy, reminding her that Christmas was about love, not proving her worth. As we walked through the mall carrying bags, Lily laughed so hard at one point that strangers smiled as they passed us. It was the sound I'd feared we'd lost forever that evening. Meanwhile, Daniel's phone buzzed nonstop. First came a text from his mother, "You embarrassed us by leaving." He ignored it, then another, "Come back, you're making a scene." Ignored again. Soon his brother called, "What happened? Mom won't tell anyone why you left." Daniel stopped walking and answered calmly, "Ask her why she gave every child a Christmas gift except my daughter." There was silence on the other end. Then his brother quietly said she actually did that, yes, I'll call you later. Within minutes, more messages poured in, not criticizing Daniel, but asking if Lily was okay. Word had spread through the family, and for the first time, everyone was hearing the truth. Daniel slipped his phone back into his pocket and smiled at Lily as she hugged her new teddy bear. "They can keep their Christmas party," he said softly. "We're making better memories tonight. Christmas came and went, but the memory of that night refused to fade." For Lily, the pain slowly softened. She spent hours riding her new purple bicycle through the neighborhood, filled sketchbook after sketchbook with colorful drawings, and carried her giant teddy bear everywhere she went. Daniel made sure she never questioned how loved she was, but for the rest of the family, the Christmas gathering became the only thing anyone wanted to talk about. Margaret believed everyone would eventually forget. Instead, the opposite happened. Within days, relatives began calling us not to defend her, but to apologize. "I had no idea she said that." Daniel's cousin admitted over the phone. "If I'd heard it myself, I would have walked out with you." Another aunt confessed something that surprised us. I've noticed for years that Margaret treated Lily differently. I kept telling myself I was imagining it. Now I realize I wasn't. One conversation after another uncovered the same pattern. Lily had always been left out in small, quiet ways. She received cheaper birthday gifts than the other children. Family photos somehow missed her. When Margaret talked about her grandchildren, she rarely included Lily's name. Everyone had seen little pieces of it. No one had realized how deep it really went. Daniel listened to every apology with grace, but he never changed his decision. When Margaret called, he let the phone ring. When she sent long text messages claiming she had been misunderstood, he didn't answer. Finally, she showed up at our front door one Saturday morning. I opened it just enough to see her standing there with a forced smile and a wrapped box in her hands. "I brought Lily her Christmas present," she said. Before I could respond, Daniel appeared behind me. He looked at the gift, then at his mother. "You didn't forget to buy her a present," he said calmly. Margaret shifted uncomfortably. I may have made a mistake." "No," Daniel replied. "A mistake is forgetting someone's name on a gift tag. You looked a 9-year-old in the eyes and told her she wasn't your real granddaughter. That wasn't a mistake. That was a choice." Margaret's face hardened. "She's not biologically." "Stop." Daniel's voice wasn't loud, but it carried enough weight to silence her instantly. "If you finish that sentence, you can forget ever seeing us again." She stared at him, shocked. "I raised you better than this." Daniel gave a sad smile. "No, Mom, you raised me to know when someone is being cruel. That's why I'm standing here." He gently closed the door. The gift remained on the porch. A week later, invitations arrived for Margaret's lavish 60th birthday celebration. She had rented an elegant ballroom, hired a live band, and expected the entire family to attend. Then something unexpected happened. Daniel's older sister, Claire, called everyone with a different idea. "What if," she said, "instead of celebrating someone who made a child cry on Christmas, we celebrate the child who deserved better?" The family agreed. On the exact same weekend as Margaret's birthday party, nearly every aunt, uncle, cousin, and niece gathered at a local park for Lily's belated Christmas celebration. There were homemade cupcakes, games, music, and a mountain of gifts, each one chosen with love. Lily laughed as her cousins chased each other across the grass, completely unaware that this day had become something much bigger than a party. It was the family's way of making things right. Meanwhile, Margaret stood in her beautifully decorated ballroom, staring at rows of empty tables. The expensive flowers, gourmet dinner, and live orchestra couldn't hide the silence. For the first time in her life, she experienced what it felt like to be left out. And unlike Lily, she had no one to blame but herself. Nearly a year passed before we saw Margaret again. Life had changed in ways I never expected. The distance from Daniel's parents had brought an unexpected peace into our home. Weekends were no longer filled with tense family dinners or awkward conversations. Instead, they were spent baking cookies, watching movies, and cheering Lily on at her soccer games. Most importantly, Lily smiled without hesitation again. She had grown taller, more confident, and somehow wiser than any 10-year-old should have been. Although she rarely mentioned that Christmas morning, I knew the memory still lingered somewhere deep inside her. Children could forgive, but they never truly forgot how someone made them feel. A few days before Christmas, our doorbell rang. When I opened the door, I barely recognized Margaret. The elegant woman who had always carried herself with pride now looked exhausted. Her eyes were tired, and the confident smile she once wore was gone. In her hands was a single gift wrapped in simple red paper. "I'd like to see Lily," she said softly. Daniel stepped beside me. "What for?" Margaret lowered her eyes. To apologize. After a long silence, Daniel nodded. "One chance," he said, "and this time you tell the truth." Lily came into the living room, curious but calm. She looked at her grandmother without fear or excitement, only quiet caution. Margaret slowly sat down across from her. "I owe you an apology," she began, her voice trembling. "Last Christmas, I said something cruel. I made you feel like you didn't belong in our family." Lily listened without saying a word. Margaret wiped away a tear. "For years, I convinced myself that family was only about blood. I believed that because you weren't born into our family, you could never truly be part of it. I was wrong." She glanced at Daniel. "My son showed me what real family looks like. He chose you every single day, and I was too stubborn to see it." The room was silent. Then Margaret placed the small gift on the coffee table. "I don't expect this present to fix anything," she said. "I know I can't erase what I did. I only hope that someday you'll remember me for trying to become a better person." Lily looked at the gift but didn't reach for it. Instead, she looked at Daniel. "Dad," he smiled gently, "this is your decision, sweetheart." Lily turned back to Margaret. "I forgive you," she said quietly, "but forgiveness doesn't make everything the way it was before." Margaret nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I understand." Then Lily said something none of us expected. "You know what my favorite Christmas gift was last year?" Margaret shook her head. "It wasn't the bike or the teddy bear." She smiled at Daniel. "It was when Dad held my hand and walked out with me." Daniel's eyes filled with tears. Lily stood up, wrapped her arms around him, and hugged him tightly. In that moment, she whispered, "I knew I'd never have to wonder if I belonged because you chose me." Daniel kissed the top of her head. "I'll choose you every day for the rest of my life." That Christmas, we started a new tradition. Instead of exchanging expensive gifts only within the family, we volunteered at a local community center where every child received a present no matter where they came from, who their parents were, or whether they were adopted, fostered, or related by blood. Lily helped hand out every gift with the biggest smile on her face. Watching her, I realized something important. Margaret had tried to teach our daughter that family was defined by blood. Daniel had taught her something far greater. Family is defined by love, loyalty, and the courage to stand beside the people who need you most. And in the end, that was the greatest Christmas gift any child could ever receive.